hooligans, and welcome back for some more Shelton Shenanigans. We are here today to read chapter 15. This book has gone by so quickly, and I just know that y'all are loving it if you've been keeping up with it the whole time. Um, we only have, there's only 19 chapters, so we don't have a whole lot more to go. So let's get right to it. This will be the last week of having questions. I told y'all that earlier in the week that this will be the last week of having questions. So next week we will just be doing these as read alouds for enjoyment, which is super exciting. We're going to read chapter 15 today, and then we're going to do the in-between sections tomorrow. And then chapter 16, 17, 18, 19 will be done next week along with the end sections on Friday. So be sure you're working super, super hard on your questions this week. And let's jump right in. So we are on chapter 15. The first question says, why were all the people fleeing New York? So fleeing means like leaving. So why were all the people fleeing New York? Number 2 says, what were people saying about King George? Number 3, and y'all remember King George from the conversations we had about the American Revolution. We were talking about George versus George in class. Number 3, what did Abner offer the farmer for a meal? What did Abner offer the farmer for a meal? Number 4, who was the farmer really? And number 5, what did they use the birds for? So as we are reading chapter 15, we are going to be listening for the answers to those questions. Okay. Chapter 15. Here we go. They were still several days away from the city of New York, and an almost constant stream of refugees came at them. Some had obviously been soldiers or fighting men of one kind or another. There were many with wounds wrapped in crude bandages. Abner stopped the wagon and furnished bandages for those who didn't have them. He also had a supply of laudanum, a painkiller that was half opium and half alcohol, and he gave some of the more gravely wounded a small bottle. Take it sparingly, he said in his deep voice, best at night before sleeping. To everyone he said, stay off the roads, redcoats are about. Cart after wagon after cart passed them, being pulled by mules or oxen. A goodly number of the people were soldiers, but a vast majority were civilians, often whole families. Where do you suppose they're all going? Samuel thought of the devastation on the trail to his rear. It certainly didn't seem like a safe place to go. Hessians, soldiers, savages. Down to Philadelphia? Abner nodded. At times, travelers were so thick, Abner had trouble moving the wagon through. Are they running from the redcoats? This from Annie, who teared up when she saw a little girl trudging along and holding a doll by one arm. That and more, Abner said. Not just the soldiers. Like I said, some of them aren't that bad. I mean, a while ago we were all loyal Englishmen. It's more of what the redcoats signify. The English crown has become a way of life these people no longer want. Part is they're scared, don't know what'll happen. But along with that, these people are sick of being told what to do by a crazy king who lives 3,000 miles away and doesn't care about them one way or the other. What do you mean crazy? Samuel asked. King George, Abner said. They say he's ticked, crazy as a bag of hazelnuts. They've got people to catch him when he runs wild, put his clothes on when he tears them off, watch him when he sleeps so that he doesn't kill himself. He's no man fit to run a kingdom. Did he start a war? It seemed a logical question. The war was so crazy, so maybe a crazy man started it. Probably not. It began on this side of the ocean. In Boston, not over there. People were sick of being treated like livestock. The dogs had been going ahead now and then to greet some people, their tails wagging, holding back with others, but now they dropped well back, and Abner stopped the wagon. The British are coming. If he hadn't seen the dogs, he would have known anyway. All the men who looked like patriot soldiers evaporated off the trail into the brush. The soldiers came in, marching in a file. Not Hessians, but regular British soldiers. There must have been 200 or 300 of them, as near as Samuel could estimate, marching in loose root step, followed by supply wagons. They did nothing threatening. They didn't stop at all, except to work around wagons that couldn't get out of the way soon enough. Abner watched them go by in silence, nodding at some of them, and when they were gone, he started up the mules. It was late in the day, and he said, "Why don't we stop for a good meal tonight?" They had been eating corn and venison, which was just about gone. Samuel had been thinking he should take his rifle and head off into the woods for another deer tomorrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean, let's have someone cook us a meal. Say the people in that farm over there." He pointed to a farm set well back off the road, with neat little white fences and a white painted house. "Right there." Samuel and Annie said nothing. The house reminded Samuel of Annie's house before the Hessians and he had wandered. But the house reminded Samuel of Annie's home before the Hessians, and he wondered if she felt the same. As they got closer to the city, there had been more and more cleared farms. They were nice, even beautiful. Some had been attacked and burned, probably by the Hessians, but many had not. It made no sense, nor did it follow any logic, like so much of what had happened. Abner pulled the wagon into the long drive, and then the yard. There was a wooden watering trough by a hand pump, and the mules went to it and started drinking. Abner, Samuel, and Annie climbed down from the wagon. "Let them drink," Abner says. "Mules don't blow themselves by over-drinking the way horses do." There was a barn, painted red, as Caleb's had been. Samuel sneaked a look at Annie, but she seemed to take it in stride. A man came from the barn. He was tall, thin, and had a tired felt hat, which he pushed to the back of his head. He started to say something, but before he could get anything out, Abner held up his hand. "Name's Abner McDougall. Honor to the house, and we come in peace. I have a fine surface sharpening stone wheel, and I repair and sharpen all tools in the house and the barn. All work for one good meal for me and the bairns. Well, I also buy and sell rags. I have some really nice linens, and the lady of the house needs some soft garment material." He spoke fast, never letting the man get a word in. "If you don't need anything we've got, we'll just thank you for the water for the mules and be on our way." The man removed his hat and rubbed his head. "Well, I've got some sickle bars that could use some honing, and I expect Martha has some knives that need touching up." No sooner said than done. "Sam, why don't you get that sharpening wheel down and we'll begin edging things up." Samuel, who had never been called Sam in his life, went to the back of the wagon and peered into the mess. He hadn't really looked at it before now. But now, as he pulled some things aside, he found the sharpening wheel, a wooden frame with a treadle, and a small tin cup to drip water on the stone. When he pulled it out of the way, he found some wire-covered crate pushed under some things. It had some kind of birds in it, and on closer examination, he saw that there were pigeons. Live pigeons. How strange. He hadn't even known they were there. Why were they hidden? He took the wheel down and put it by the trough, filled the tin cup, and hung it by the wire over the wheel so that water could drip from a small hole in the can onto the stone. He made sure the treadle worked and the wheel spun. The man came from the barn with 3 hand sickles, and that had long curved blade used for harvesting wheat or other grains. Abner took one, stood by the wheel, and gestured to Samuel to start pumping with his leg to get the stone spinning. Abner held the first blade against the stone as it turned, making a scraping, hissing sound, and the steel edge ground down the razor to sharpness. Samuel was amazed at how easily the stone spun. This shouldn't take too long. How peaceful it all seemed. He kept pumping until the other sickle was gone. Then another, and Samuel switched pumping legs. Legs a little tired. And another, he switched legs again. Legs a little more tired. Then 3 axes, 2 picks, a tomahawk, a set of rail-splitting wedges, 6 of them, 4 slaughtering and sticking knives, and 4 butcher knives that Martha, a short, thin woman who was all smiles, brought from the house. then an ice chisel, 2 serrated hay knives, 2 planking axes, 1 shingle froe, and at last an old cavalry saber that the farmer, named Micah, used for chopping corn. Samuel staggered over to the trough to wash. Abner put his whole head under water and then shook like a dog. He pulled his hair back and combed his beard down, and Samuel saw Micah smile at him. He saw something else there, a look of what? Recognition, as if they already knew each other? The meal was good, very good, though it was not up to the standards that they had eaten at Caleb's. Venison stew, piles of new potatoes, fresh bread with new butter, apple pie made with maple sugar, and fresh buttermilk cool from the spring house on the side of the barn, in quantities to fill even Samuel. He was shy about asking for seconds, but Martha kept piling it on, and he ate it gracefully. He ate it gratefully. Sit-down meals were always rare in his life, even before the war. He winced at that thought. Before the war. There didn't even seem to be such a thing anymore. With what he was living in the woods and on the hunt most of the time. But being a guest was almost unheard of, and he wasn't really sure how to act. He needn't have worried, as Caleb and Micah and Martha made eating enjoyable, not something to fret over. When they were done with seconds and thirds on the pie, even Annie ate like a wolf. They went out to sit on the porch while Micah and Abner lit up clay pipes with coal from the fireplace. Food gets better every time I stop here, Abner said, ending the mystery. I didn't think it was possible. She sure can cook, Micah nodded, smiling. In fact, there ain't much she can't do. Annie and Samuel sat on the edge of the porch. The dogs were in the dirt in front of them. Annie was about to doze off, but Samuel wanted to listen, so he sat drawing pictures in the dirt with a stick, the dogs watching with a kind of casual interest as the stick moved around. Know anything about the happenings in New York? Abner asked. How it went? Micah shook his head. Not much. The English took it and a bunch of prisoners. They moved in. The English took over houses for their own. They ain't making a lot of friends. Of course, that doesn't seem to bother them much, the not making friends part. The way that they brought those dang Hessians into it, they basically hired mad dogs. The passes I brought you working out? So far, I'm worried about scavengers hitting us, the wild ones who would kill you for a turnip, but we're still here, ain't we? Good. I've got more birds to leave. You still have that hutch in the back of the barn? Yep. Same as before. Send one if anything big comes along. I'll send one this evening. We saw a large detachment heading up the road today, maybe 200. They ought to know about it back in Philadelphia. If the Hawks don't get them, I don't know how any of them will get past the Hawks. Well, there's always that. Always some risk, but it's better than nothing. The pigeons are for carrying messages, Samuel thought. He glanced at Abner out of the corner of his eye. There was so much more to him than he had thought at first. The men sat smoking in silence for a minute. Then Abner said, You said they took some prisoners. Samuel's parents weren't military, but they took them prisoner anyway. They're doing that, Micah nodded. There's just no sense to it. Just see a man working in a field and take him for a prisoner. It's stupid. Like they think the crops are going to plant themselves. Do you know where they're keeping the prisoners? Not certain. There are water houses and an old sugar mill. You remember that 3-story thing they built to mill sugar? Abner nodded. Along the waterfront? Yes, I think they might use that, along with the warehouses. There are thousands of prisoners. I don't know how they'll feed them. Plus, I suppose plenty of them were wounded, and it can't be good for them. Well, Abner said, knocking his pipe out on the side of the porch. This, Samuel saw, made the dogs stand up and get ready. He was amazed by them. They saw everything. We'll see what we can see, Abner said. It was starting to get dark. You mind if we sleep here tonight? We'll be out of here early in the morning. Why would I mind? There's new hay in the loft. Makes a good bed as long as you don't smoke. With the mules unharnessed, fed hay, and put out in a pen for the night, Abner took time to put 2 pigeons in the hutch in the back of the barn. He wrote something on a tiny thin piece of paper, tied it to a third pigeon's leg, and let him go. He and Samuel and Annie watched the bird fly away to the south. He'll roost somewhere tonight if he doesn't get there before dark. It's probably only 40 miles in a straight flight, an hour the way they move, so he should make it. Imagine just moving through the air at 40 miles an hour. Just imagine. Later, lying on the new hay with the cover smell thick around him, Samuel and Annie could hear Samuel could hear Annie breathing regularly in sleep. He teetered on the edge of it, but before it came, he said to Abner, who was lying just above him on the stacked hay bales, "You and Micah aren't what you seem to be, are you?" "We are," Abner chuckled. "Exactly what we seem to be, but maybe just a little bit more." Okay, that was an excellent chapter. I know it was kind of long. Hopefully you stayed with me. So we're going to go over the questions just super duper quick. Woo! And then we will move right along. So, Chapter 15 questions. Number 1, why were all the people fleeing New York? Number 2, what were all the people saying about King George? Number 3, what did Abner offer the farmer for a meal? Number 4, who was the farmer really? And number 5, what did they use the birds for? So, if you stuck around this long, you are in luck because we are going to do some more shout outs. So today's shout out from my class is, let's see here. Shout out to Caleb Proctor. He has been super on top of all of his work lately, and I am super duper proud of how great you've been working. He's making sure that he watches all the videos, making sure he gets all of his work done, and if he has any questions, he never hesitates to ask. From Mr. Baker's class, shout out to Marcus Collins. He has been doing a super good job of making sure that he is joining into those morning meetings when he can. He's getting his work done when he can, and I'm super proud of all of your hard work. From Miss Savage's class, shout out to Zamarian. He has been doing an awesome job in all of this virtual learning and just making me super duper proud. So if you were today's shout out, then be sure to show your parents, comment below, make sure, hopefully you watched to the end of the video so you didn't miss the shout out. And y'all be sure you tell your friends who are getting shout outs congratulations because they're working really hard. And if you haven't gotten a shout out yet, maybe yours is coming up soon, or maybe you need to get to work. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. But yes, I love you, and go change the world and go do all your homework. Bye.